Dorothy Latigue. I don't know why I always want girl, I know why I want to call her Annette, but I'm not. I need to okay. Dorothy Latigue, Kei'Mani Latigue's grandmother was in court yesterday and she was over in the probate court. And if you were wondering why Kei'Mani has not been laid to rest, this will answer your question. She has not been laid to rest because there have been some drama with her final arrangements. Number one, there was some drama with the funeral home. The first funeral home that they had set up, Sir had some sort of creepy yoki, some sort of um past. I'm gonna say it like that. Um the initial funeral home for Kei'Mani's funeral, the funeral home director had a sordid or questionable past, and people were outraged, and he passed it on to another funeral home. Okay. So that was one thing. There have been public monies collected, and she will be laid to rest properly. But the grandmother, Miss Dorothy Latigue, Dorothy has gotten approval from the judge. The judge grants Kei'Mani Latigue's grandmother the right to handle the funeral arrangements. Let me see if it's ready or is there a commercial going to pop? Let's get into it. Just a second. Let's
Berger made it clear why Kei'Mani's mother and
okay, let's see right here. Let's see.
Berger made it clear why Kei'Mani's mother and grandma.
Why can't I get that from the very beginning?
Shaq Puffenberger made it clear why Kei'Mani's mother and grandmother were in court. Kei'Mani's mother, Tiara Caston, appeared virtually.
There seems to be some disagreement between next of kin on how the disposition of the deceased remains.
So there seems to be some disagreement between the next of kin and the decedent's remains. Okay, that's what he's here to settle at the probate. Okay.
To clear why Kei'Mani's mother and grandmother were in court. Kei'Mani's mother, Tiara Caston, appeared virtually.
There seems to be some disagreement between next of kin on how the disposition of the deceased remains.
Her grand.
So Kei'Mani Royale Caprice Latigue, that's her name. This document right here, probate court. So they filed a complaint in the probate court. Application for right of disposition. Okay.
Grandmother Dorothy Latigue filed this paperwork in probate court on Friday, asking the judge to hear the case. The grandmother said her only desire is to dispose of Kei'Mani's remains respectfully, but they can't bury the child because she and her mother are fighting over who has the right to plan the funeral.
To my understanding, we had a disagreement only because she felt like she wasn't invited to the ceremony, only because we have not kept in contact since the situation arose.
Police say.
Are there invitations to I mean, I guess people do get notified, but I don't know.
Felt like she wasn't invited to the ceremony.
Fighting over who has the right to plan the funeral.
To my understanding, we had a disagreement only because she felt like she wasn't invited to the ceremony, only because we have not kept in contact since the situation arose.
Police say Kei'Mani Latigue was murdered at the hands of her father, Darnell Jones. Her body found in this abandoned home. The community outraged. Her body moved from funeral home to funeral home. Judge Puffenberger saying this has gone on too long. He based his decision off of how close the women were to Kei'Mani and their plans for the funeral.
She's not just been in my house for the past 5.5 years. When she was with the prior custodian, we still kept contact to the point where Kei'Mani was still coming back and forth to my home.
Kei'Mani's mother told the court.
The last time that I was permitted to see my child was her 11th birthday.
Wait a second. So the last time she was permitted to see her child was her 11th birthday. Was she not all over social media talking about she had just seen Kei'Mani like a few days before she had passed away? and she was at her house or something, and Darnell came to pick or something. Wasn't there some sort of situation like that? Well, I guess those are the legal terms of how you're handling someone's remains. Um, yeah. I don't think dispose, I don't think they mean as in that way. I think it's just the final disposition of the person's remains. I guess that's just the technical legal way. Um, I'm assuming. But back to, so the last time, I just feel like the mother had said something else about her last time seeing Kei'Mani, and that there was a day they were like, they were scoring on each other, they were playing, they were having fun. I don't know if she meant that that was like supposed to be on FaceTime or something like that. But baby, if the last time you saw her was she was 11, last time you were permitted, and she was getting ready to be 14, hun, that's a long time. That's 3 years for a child. That's a quarter. You know what I mean? That's going up on a long time.
I would say that based off of the interactions that I've had with my daughter and the conversations that we had, I do believe we were close.
Ms. Latigue, I assume your daughter would be invited to the private family funeral.
And of course,
You would not try to exclude her.
no.
He asked how the grandmother would pay for the funeral.
Was there some community money donated for a funeral?
There were several organizations that are providing their services. So to date, again, everything is paid for.
The judge ruled in the grandmother's favor.
What I had planned was a private ceremony so that the family could attend, and we have a open casket funeral, and then there was a public ceremony also planned for the community.
And Kei'Mani's grandmother told the judge that she would like to have Kei'Mani's funeral this week. Back to you.
So I guess her private family funeral, but they also gave, let's see what it says in the article. I think she was given permission to cremate. Lucas County judge determined Tuesday that the grandmother of Kei'Mani Latigue has the right to handle funeral arrangements. Judge Jack Puffenberger determined Dorothy Latigue had the legal right to plan the funeral for her granddaughter. You don't see your daughter for 3 years. I hate it for the lady, Tierra Caston, but ma'am, we don't plan the day and time nor the hour. We don't know when things are going to happen. And baby, you were absent for too long, unfortunately, and you missed that right. It's sad, but this is going to be a lesson learned for a lot of people. If you're absent from your kid's life, you can't come in at the tail end thinking that they're going to roll out the red carpet for you to all of a sudden assume your role, and be able to do things that, I guess, the when the judge looks at it, you don't get that right. It's unfortunate, but and Dorothy ain't no better. Let's just be honest. Okay. Wasn't there some lie like that? She said the dad bought her over and she gave her. So the man who ends up taking her out of this world brings her to the woman's house where she's not permitted to see. She gave her $100 for her birthday and gave the dad $60 for food and gas. I remember that they were saying something like that. This was a whole mess. God rest little Kei'Mani's soul. Dorothy Latigue said she plans to invite Kei'Mani's mother, Tierra Caston, to the services. Detail for those services are unverified at this time, but the judge determined that there will be a public and private service. It is likely to be held this week. A spokesperson for the funeral home said they will let the news media know specifics when it's finalized. Dorothy filed the paperwork in probate court last week, asking the judge to hear the case. She said her only desire is to dispose of Kei'Mani's remains respectfully. I think that's the legal term, dispose. So like carry out. There's so I think that's just the legal terminology of handling someone's remains. They haven't been able to bury Kei'Mani because Dorothy and Tierra are fighting over who has the right to plan the funeral. To my understanding, we had a disagreement only because she felt she wasn't invited to the ceremony. We had a disagreement because she felt like she wasn't invited to the ceremony. Only because we have not kept in contact since the situation arose, Dorothy Latigue said. The community has been outraged as the teen's body has been moved from funeral home to funeral home. Judge Puffenberger said the case has gone on too long. He based his decision off of how close the women were to Kei'Mani along with their plans for the funeral. She has not been in the house for the past 5.5 years. When she was with the prior custodian, we still kept in contact to the point where Kei'Mani was still coming back and forth to my home, Dorothy Latigue said. Tierra Caston told the court the last time she was permitted to see Kei'Mani was on her 11th birthday. Sis, that was 3 years ago, okay? I would say based on the interaction I had with my daughter and conversations we had, I do believe we were close. Judge Puffenberger asked if there was community money donated for a funeral, and were several organizations that were providing their services. So to date, again, everything is paid for, Dorothy Latigue said. What I had planned was a private ceremony so the family could attend and we could have a open casket funeral. And then there was a public ceremony also planned for the community. So 13 Action News reported last month Brown Legacy Memorial Funeral Home was originally planned to hold a public and private for Kei'Mani, but was later transferred to Dale Riggs Funeral Home. Yeah, Brown Legacy had an issue. I think that man had some sort of background that was not conducive to children, and it was immediately changed to Dale Riggs. Investigators found the 7th grader's body just over 2 weeks ago at an abandoned house on Miami Street. The teen's father, Darnell Jones, is accused of abducting and killing her. Okay. Dorothy Latigue appears in the Lucas County courtroom with her daughter. Tierra Caston appears virtually via Zoom as the judge determines who will have the rights over the funeral for Kei'Mani Latigue. And the decision was made by the judge that it would be the grandmother. The Blade newspaper said Lucas County probate judge Jack Puffenberger has granted Kei'Mani Latigue's custodial grandmother's application to handle the girl's funeral arrangements, including cremation of her body. After a hearing at which the girl's mother, Tierra Caston, participated by Zoom, the judge on Tuesday granted without comment Dorothy Latigue's application dated Friday for the right of disposition according to the court's documents. I would like to properly hold a funeral and cremate her remains without it becoming a circus for the family, the grandmother wrote in an application. While not involved in her daughter's life for approximately 2 through 5 years, Mrs. Latigue wrote, Ms. Caston now was claiming Kei'Mani's body and making a spectacle out of this tragic situation. Judge Puffenberger said later Tuesday that the case was a first for him. While cases occasionally arise in which someone wishes to disinter a body and bury it somewhere else, he said, I don't recall having one before regarding the right to bury someone before they've been buried the first time. Baby. In the comments. Okay. Okay. I think he is still in custody. I've been searching. Let me just do a search real quick just to see. Cuz I'm like, well, damn. He's been in the hospital for damn 2 weeks. Columbus Darnell Jones release. Oh, girl, 9 minutes ago. Darnell, man accused in custody of Columbus Area Correction Center. Okay. Okay, hold on a second. Baby. Uh-oh. Okay. This was 9 minutes ago, okay? Darnell Jones, a man accused of killing his daughter, Kei'Mani Latigue, last month, is in custody at a Columbus area correction center. He was previously hospitalized after a Columbus police officer shot him more than 2 weeks ago. According to Franklin County Sheriff's Office, Jones, who also goes by the surname Ogletree, is in custody at the James A. Carnes Correctional Center as of Wednesday. Jones' arraignment in Columbus is scheduled for 9 a.m. Thursday. Jones is charged with felonious assault in Columbus and is charged with murder, felonious assault, and abduction in her death. Until Wednesday, Jones had not appeared in any official court or jail documentation. There is no word yet on when he'll be extradited to Toledo. Jones is pictured below in a 2022 mugshot. A current mugshot has not been immediately available by Franklin County Sheriff's Department. Let's go. Kei'Mani Latigue's disappearance and death. This comes, just a second. Let me get my arrow together. This comes more than 2 weeks after Kei'Mani's body was found in a blighted East Toledo home on March 24th. Following a week-long disappearance, Jones was charged with murder in Kei'Mani's death. According to Lucas County Coroner's Office, Kei'Mani's cause of death was multiple cuts to the neck. The manner of death was ruled a homicide. Jones has been charged with murder, felonious assault in her death. Columbus police SWAT officers shot and injured Jones last month and apprehended him. Since then, he has remained in Columbus. Jones was the last person to see Kei'Mani alive before she was reported missing on March 18th, according to the police. Jones was accused of removing her from her home without her guardian's consent and giving police inconsistent statements about his activity with the victim, according to a warrant issued for his arrest. Okay. And then I'm gonna let you go.
April 11th, her grandmother, Dorothy Latigue, said in court that her family is working.
So the funeral is going to be Friday, and that's going to be the private situation. That's going to be the private
community and children's services in response to Kei'Mani's death.
Now, we learned just today there will be a public funeral for Kei'Mani on Friday, April 11th. Her grandmother, Dorothy Latigue, said in court that her family is working with Dale Riggs Funeral Home. Dorothy argued in court today that the original plan was to have a private and public funeral last week.
However, she says the holdup came when Kei'Mani's mother, Tiara Caston, wanted to have the right to Kei'Mani's funeral planning and estate. Tiara claims Dorothy was trying to block her from attending the funeral. Ultimately, the judge granted Dorothy the right to proceed.
And how long was your granddaughter living with you on a daily basis? For 5 years?
For the past 5.5 years, yes.
How frequently did your daughter visit?
We haven't seen her collectively since her 11th birthday, which was 2022. And my other daughter went to Cleveland to pick her up. Other than that, she claimed she had no transportation to even come to the birthday party.
So I'm sorry, you might have said this already. Well, there would be a private funeral
There will
on,
be a private ceremony, and then there will be a public ceremony for all of those that donated. It's our way of saying thank you. We appreciate, your gestures.
when would the private one be?
The private ceremony will be for family only.
That would be when?
That will be Thursday,
And then the public ceremony, right?
correct?
That's, and the funeral home is, can you do that?
Yes. They're just waiting on me to get back in contact with them and let them know whether we should go forth or, if it rules in her favor, what she's going to do.
I have not resided in Toledo in 12 years. I left because of the strain between me and my mother. As I said before, I was
She didn't even turn her camera on. How are you coming to court to try to claim your child? And then they have information like you hadn't been there for 3 years. And on top of that, girl, you didn't even turn on the camera. Can you turn on the camera for the Zoom? But you want to be responsible for her remains after everything that happened to her? Not that Dorothy's any better, but at least she got a plan.
under the impression by other family members that have been in contact with her that I was not to be invited to my daughter's funeral procession. I have been threatened, not by my mother, but by my sister, who has been steadfast, sticking to my mother. And not to say I don't mind their relationship at all, but I have been threatened by my sister during this whole thing.
As in a lot of situations where family people aren't getting along really well, we hear different comments about things that aren't relevant to what we're doing here. But my focus today is on the statute and the items that the court's to consider. And the ones that stand out the most are close personal relationship and the reasonableness and practicality of any plans a person has for disposition. And convenience of family members and other friends wishing to pay their respects to the declarant. And based upon those three factors, it's clear to the court that the application for right of disposition filed by Dorothy Latigue shall be granted. So the court will issue a entry within the next hour or so, and so we'll get that to the funeral home, and we will proceed to get this child laid to rest. And I'm not saying anybody's right here or wrong, but I'm saying based upon the factors that I need to consider, those factors weigh in favor of you having right of disposition. Basically, a lot of it's a close personal relationship. I mean, you raised this child.
No further details have been
questions about who was and wasn't involved in Kei'Mani's life and care. That includes those questions that center around the role of the man identified as her father, Darnell Jones. Again, he is charged with Kei'Mani's murder. And Lucas County Children's Services addressed whether the agency had any knowledge of a paternal figure and how that could have impacted their investigation or placement decisions had he been identified.
If Dad was part, if it ever had surfaced in a conversation, or if he had come up, would that have made your work any different? Would the caseworker have handled it any differently if Dad's listed or mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. If there's a father that's identified, we have to talk with all the principals in the case. So the identified can be two ways. One, established as the father in the case, and we have a record of that. or the child can identify somebody that they view either as a father, an alleged father, or an actual father. So if either one of those things had happened, if our database had indicated we had an identified established father, we would have been required to reach out to that individual. If the child had identified, hey, this gentleman is dad, or he is a support, or I view him as dad, we would have reached out. Those did not occur in December or March of last year.
And would that have changed what you would have done when it comes to a placement with her if dad had surfaced?
No, I suppose it depends on what we would have learned. From whoever was identified as dad. But no, I mean, we determined that the placement there was appropriate. All the basic needs of the child were being met. She was getting all of her sustenance, her housing conditions were fine, her school and medical conditions were being met. So the presence of a father would not have caused us, I think, to recommend to the juvenile court that they change custody or placement.
Leadership from Lucas County Children's Services is pledging change and compassion. Suzette Cowell.
Yeah, they did a press conference. This is the press conference, like a 40-minute press conference, and answered some questions.
And we take very good care
I think
of
they
Her store team.
Okay, but that's the main news for today, is that Darnell Jones is in the custody of Columbus, and he'll be eventually extradited back down to Lucas County. And Granny Dorothy got the rights to handle the funeral arrangements, and the funeral, she said here Thursday, but I think it's actually now Friday, the private family funeral. And I guess there's going to be a public funeral following for the community at large, for people who want to pay their respects to Kei'Mani. So, yeah. Then the daughter, Kei'Mani's mother, who's trying to fight for the opportunity to handle her funeral arrangements, she's over there on Zoom and doesn't even turn on the camera. Are you kidding me? Not that that makes a huge difference, but you are in court for your daughter, for the right and the privilege to handle your daughter's final arrangements, and you've got your actual mother saying you haven't been around for 3 years. It's just not a good look, sis. So anyway, but she tried. Tiara tried it, and Dorothy is getting the right. We don't know what happened with Dorothy. I know a lot of people say Dorothy needs charges. I guess we're going to see how that pans out.